Hello, Doug Dormer here for Module 1, Lesson 2, administrative stuff in our first module discussing consumer health informatics, empowering the patient as a consumer. Let's see if there we go. I want to talk a bit about the tools we're going to use in this and the timing. YouTube will be the primary source of delivery, and I think I can bundle these into albums or into a module of these lessons so that you can click on one, hopefully what I would think of as a channel within which are modules. Within modules are individual lessons. So I confess I haven't set this up in YouTube. I've done it in Canvas and the tools we use at the university, but not in YouTube. So allow for a little adjustment as I sort that out when I post this. I'm going to try to post modules every Monday, possibly Tuesday morning, so that we have new content every week, roughly paralleling what I'm doing in my class. We'll use Slack. I'll set up a Slack channel, and that will be for open discussion topics. I may raise questions. I invite you to engage questions. It's the way we will treat this more like a working group in one of the major associations. If you're not in healthcare, whatever business you're in, you may well participate in industry kinds of working groups. In healthcare, the two that I tend to affiliate most closely with are AMIA, the American Medical Informatics Association, and HIMSS, the Health Information Management and Services Society. And so I'm using that as kind of a model. I expect that we will not have real-time meetings, although if there's a demand, we can certainly schedule one and have people join all together and be real-time through Zoom. But at least we will be working using YouTube and then using Slack, possibly using Google Documents as well. Cost and expectations. Well, this is a free series. This first module certainly is going to be open to the public and searchable. So I'll certainly try to promote it a little bit on LinkedIn and Facebook. And it should be available searchable for anybody that wants to see it. After that, subsequent modules will also be free, but I'm not going to make the link searchable. To view the additional modules, let me know. Just drop me a note, either in the comments to this one of these videos, or send me an email, and I'll send you the link both to the YouTube channel and to the Slack channel that we'll be using. I encourage your participation, particularly in Slack, but no pressure. It's interesting with my students in these classes. Sometimes they want to lurk and not have to engage with each other. So I have to coerce them. Well, I'm not going to coerce people, but I hope we have people for whom this is interesting information. As a seminar, and this is important, I'm not here to preach to you, although I will preach to you. I'm not here, that's not my primary purpose. I'm here to give you my experience. But my real skill isn't in having some unique knowledge of this stuff. My skill is being able to speak to people, to work as a vendor, to ask questions, to understand, to apply that in a way that I can understand needs and be able to design solutions from those needs and then think through the barriers as a vendor. That's my real focus. And so in this case, I need you to participate with me. I need you to say, yeah, you're wrong. I can say you didn't consider. I need you to say, that's great. That's right, but it's not enough. Whatever you need to say, I'd like you to go ahead and tell me what you think and participate in these discussions in Slack. I have no way of knowing if we're going to get nobody doing this or one or two people. So I'd appreciate it, especially early on, if you'd let me know you want to participate and then weigh in once a week or so. See what the discussion is. I think it'll be interesting. Also, please feel free to post your questions or ideas that we can develop together. I don't want to be solely the source of the direction of this. I'd love to have your thoughts and your involvement. I'm going to go back for a second here. I also want to say something that's not quite on here. Let's see. Yeah. If you have something you'd like my students to explore, a particular problem with an existing consumer health informatics technology or approach or market, or if you have an area that you think would be of interest, I'd like you to propose it here. I'd like us in this group to talk about it. And if it makes sense, and I reserve that judgment, I'd be glad to present it to my class. So they will be doing a project broken into smaller groups. I'd be glad to take your area of interest and submit it to my students. If you think that's something you'd like to see, let me know. Let me bring it to my students. Let's see what work they can do that might contribute to the larger knowledge around consumer health informatics and empowering the consumer. This is kind of a course schedule. I'm not really, I don't really expect to adhere too strictly to this, largely because with the new administration coming in a week, I expect that we will see shifts and changes. And in fact, today is already some things coming in. A new study comes out, so that came out that could have an effect, and it will affect our timing. But look at what we'll be covering. For next week, I want to talk about the history of consumer health informatics incentives and barriers. Then the next week, I'm going to spend a deeper dive into evidence-based practice in consumer health information. That's a lot more interesting a topic than one might think off the top. We'll also talk about the various roles, an introduction to the various roles of CHI. The fourth module, we'll talk about patient-based models for sharing, peer support, research, and policy advocacy. One only needs to look at COVID and long COVID as clear examples where, without diminishing the role of the experts, the consumers have done some amazing work and amazing advancing of the science, as well as providing value to the community of people affected by COVID. So that's our first area, and I'm excited by that. Module 5 will look at synchronous CHI, such as video conferencing. And in fact, today was an article published in the American Journal of Psychiatry that talks about which demographics benefit from the explosive increase in telemedicine or telemental health. So we'll be covering that as well. Asynchronous is an area that I love, and that basically means using the technology to complement in-person therapies. That's where my expertise is. And it really becomes CHI as a therapy, or as it's sometimes called, software as a medical device. So there's really interesting work, FDA approval, cool stuff to talk about there. Then we'll talk about passive CHI, remote patient monitoring in all of its flavors. We'll talk about CHI to address diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is under attack right now. And it will be really interesting to see what happens in the next 4 months, since Vice President-elect J.D. Vance in September as a senator introduced a bill called I forget the exact name, but it's basically getting rid of DEI funding from the federal government, expressly calling out through the Department of Health and Human Services. So if funding causes the federal government if legislation or executive action causes the federal government to stop funding DEI, we'll be looking closely at that impact. We'll be looking at the evidence supporting whether DEI is effective. And then we'll look at social determinants of health, from housing to food insecurity. And really, we'll be addressing that entire notion of the exposome. Now, that may be a new word for you. It's been around for about 12, 15 years, longer than that, 14, 15 years. I've been seeing it, but increasingly because of climate change. What the exposome really means is that as we look at our health, it's really a function, and this is a gross oversimplification, but for this early stage, I think it'll work. Our health outcomes are the function of our own genetics, what our own predisposition is, combined with the effects of everything in our environment and our own social behaviors and how we live and how we operate. Those external forces are generally referred to now as the exposome, and certainly climate is a huge part of it. There will be a meeting of a working group from the American Medical Informatics Association on January 30th, looking at how do you translate numbers and values amongst those different kinds of concepts of the exposome into health models. Sorry. And I will be participating in that work group on the 30th. So interesting stuff in that area. Then we'll move into the financial considerations. How do you think about all of this health informatics, assuming that you have value from it in terms of health outcomes, what does it mean from a business point of view, particularly in this changing environment of changing policies? I have spring break with my classes in around March 17th. I may or may not post something for this group that week, but I'm calling it out as a week I'm going to try to take some time off. Then we've got recent regulatory and payment incentives. And so we ask the question, is it a time for innovation? Which really means, what will the effect be of the Republican policies on where we thought we were prior to the election? And that translates into how long a runway do we have? How long can we predict that the world will be somewhat stable on these policies? Or can we design solutions for CHI that are largely independent of those policy swings? We'll also talk about evaluating the need and opportunity. How do you really define the need for a specific technology and make it the highest priority compared to other critical decisions that healthcare providers or venture capitalists or whomever need to make along the way? I'd like to see us in April discuss preparing a request for funding, pitching to management or investors. And I may, with my students' permission, show you some of the work that they're doing. I'm pretty excited by the work that they're doing, or I have been in my past semesters. It's too early for this one, but I'm excited by the group of students I have, and I think they'll be doing really interesting work. And equally, if you've got a topic you've brought to me that you'd like us to explore, I'd love to have my students work on it and come back to you and say, here are our thoughts. Would you react to that? And of course, then after that, we'll talk about some specific CHI opportunities. We'll be looking at where we think, based on everything we've covered, the sweet spot might be for the next year at least. And then we'll have some conclusions and some predictive stuff looking ahead. It promises to be a pretty interesting 4 months. So that's it on the second lesson in Module 1. Click on the next one, and we'll begin with a very high-level overview of consumer health informatics itself.